clear of the closing doors, please.
All right, here we go. Subway Sports Talk. My name is Peter Kennedy, and I am your host. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning into SST on Apple Podcasts app, Spotify, and on YouTube. Don't forget to hit a subscribe button on your podcast app or on YouTube. Follow us on socials at Subway Sports Talk. And it is NBA Finals week. What a week of just like killing all the momentum, talking all about these games for the past month of NBA playoff action. And then the conference finals ends in not dramatic fashion, and we have to wait a whole week for anything to take place after that. So we finally made it, and here to talk all through the NBA finals previews, predictions, props, and whatever the heck else we want to get through is none other than Cody O'Connor. Cody, what's up, brother?
Pete, what's up, man? What a week of waiting that was. I mean, it's like an early look into the dog days of summer. It made us just focus on the Mets, at least as Mets fans, and that wasn't really good for my mental health. So I'm just happy that the NBA Finals is here finally. NHL Cup is going to be here, and so I can kind of distract myself with some other sports in the not so distant future. Looking forward to it.
And it's weird that it feels as long as it's been because we had quite the sports weekend, right? Like you had the Rangers still playing up until Saturday night. You had a nice UFC event on Saturday night that I was watching. But it still felt like there's been a load of time. It was almost like that week after the conference championship games in the NFL where you're like, all right, now we have to wait basically 14 days for the Super Bowl, and it's going to be a long one. And with the Super Bowl, I always know, like, all right, we have hoops playing right now. Regular season basketball is going on, so I'm chilling. But I don't even think about the Super Bowl until like the next Tuesday or Wednesday, maybe even, or maybe whenever we do the podcast, right? With this one, it was weird. It kind of feel like it killed the momentum. And I get like, okay, they have to have the schedule set for all the parties and the sponsors and the TV schedule and all that stuff. But it was weird, and I feel like this hasn't happened in a while. At least I can't remember it, where both conference finals were just over in 4 and 5 games, and that's wild. It doesn't happen every year, but hey, those games weren't even bad. That's the weird part. Like the Timberwolves Mavs played some fun games. The Pacers Celtics almost only played fun games, yet it never felt close. I mean, them losing that first game in Boston really was the writing on the wall that series is going to be a shorter one. But they competed, and you got to give them some credit. What we're going to do besides talk NBA Finals, by the way, just for some housekeeping, little Mets, Yankees, quick hitters at the end of the show. And we might have a little Pat Boyle appearance in a little bit, so we'll hear from him as well. But Cody, a good place to start on this front with the Celtics and Mavericks going into the NBA Finals is just a storyline perspective, right? There's always going to be, what are the big storylines? What are the key things we have to watch out for from a player perspective, franchise, coaches, outside storylines, all this different stuff that's going on, all gets talked about and really looked at with a microscope as much as we possibly can. So my question to you is, what is that one thing when you think about Mavs Celtics Finals 2024 before the series starts? What's the one thing that stands out to you as like, this is the big picture item above all else?
Well, when we're talking NBA Finals, it's always legacy, right? Whoever wins the title, you've got this added to your career, to your resume. For a guy like, well, actually Luka and Tatum, both super young. It's kind of like a jump start. For Tatum, it's really going to solidify what's been happening over the last 6 years of his career. And for Luka, it's probably if he wins this, the conversation will happen, regardless of whichever side you're on, that he's the best player in the NBA. I would say both of us are probably pretty firm that he's still not above Joker, despite what he might do, and maybe he's got the chance to leap him. So to me, for Luka's side, for the Mavs side, it's all about where's he going to be considered amongst his peers, amongst that top 5 conversation, best player in the league conversation. And speaking of top 5, I think, and we had this conversation last week about rounding out that top 5, and the more I've been thinking about it, the more I think with the title that Tatum does solidify himself as that 5th spot. You know, we kind of mentioned Joker, Luka, SGA, and Giannis. I think that's like a core 4 that's kind of, you can't really argue it to much of a degree. But that 5th spot, it's not really reserved for anyone, and I think it's there for Tatum to take with winning the title. So those are to me like the overarching storylines: best player, what's going to happen to their resume, to their legacy. So that's what I'm looking at first and foremost.
And I think you're 100% right. And we're going to break down the Luka side and the Tatum side, because I do think with what you said there about Tatum, and I don't want to go off on that tangent yet, but I just want to put this as a teaser real quick. Him getting to the top 5 if they win is definitely a storyline. If they win, I think he could jump to 4, but that seems like it. I feel like he could go above SGA in the zeitgeist of the NBA talk just for now, right? Or at least like an equal tied for 4th type of thing, toss up tied for 4th type of situation. That seems like the peak, but you're right. For the Luka side, which I want to go to first here, that feels like, okay, everyone will together say either he is the number 1 right now, he holds the belt, to take a line from Bill Simmons, or he is the standalone number 1 contender. Like if we're using a UFC analogy here, if Joker is still the one who holds the belt, Luka is the one closest to taking it, and he deserves that next shot at the spot. So those are the 2 storylines. So on the Luka Doncic front, and I wish I had more time this week, but work got in the way. Like these jobs over here, jobs are just, always ruining days. I don't understand it. But there was 2 different videos that I wanted to point out to, that I wanted to get on social that I didn't have a chance to this week. One was you, Cody O'Connor, rightfully predicting the Dallas Mavericks well before they were looked at as a contender. I believe, as you said it on the podcast months ago, they were plus 3,000 to win the NBA Finals. And in our yours and I's draft of contenders, we talked about them. We were both talking about them as this sleeping giant, and you did a great job breaking down what the trades of Gafford and PJ Washington could mean, and you did all that stuff, which ended up being incredibly right. I wanted to highlight that. And then I was doing a whole Luka Doncic soliloquy, saying that like people have almost taken him for granted to a point, because he got so good so quick in his career, that it's like, all right, this guy is instantly put in the James Harden category of like, it's not going to work in the playoffs. And I was sitting here like, why are we doing this to this guy already? Because his first year in the league, he put up great numbers, great rookie of the year, obvious, boom, should have been the number 1 pick, wasn't even a question. But then year 2, his numbers went off the charts. He was astronomically productive just year 2 already. And then made a conference finals, had some really big time playoff moments, but people wanted to just be like, no, his style's not going to work in the playoffs. It's not going to get the job done. You can't play the heliocentric basketball, which is one of those buzzwords people like to throw around as a negative, which I totally understand. But I didn't understand, Cody, that people were burying him already as like, yeah, he's just this great player whose stats are going to be incredible, but I don't see why he's going to be a championship guy. And I'm like, do we not remember the history of almost every great player in this league? None of them, outside of like the Magic Johnsons who played with other Hall of Famers on his team, were winning championships by themselves. Like it just never happened. And I used LeBron James as the comparison. And in the breakout video that's on Subway Sports Talk social media right now, I actually did make a mistake pointing out which year of LeBron's career did he make his first finals and win his first finals. I just like messed up the numbers, but it's not that far off. And I do believe part of this storyline stuff that we're talking about is the Luka Doncic, LeBron James comparison that existed in his rookie year that quickly went off the wayside, because for some reason people just assumed like he was more James Harden than he was LeBron James. To me, I never got it. And now he is going to get his flowers. He's getting them already, that he is now on that trajectory to have an all-time NBA career. If Luka Doncic wins the finals this year, Cody, it is officially an all-time trajectory. We're talking Pantheon. We're talking top 10 all-time trajectory, because that's where he's already been, but people didn't want to admit it for whatever reason because they didn't see it on the biggest stage yet. But here he is, year what? Year 6? And here he is on the biggest stage with a chance to put himself on that all-time path. And I think that's a storyline that will absolutely come from this finals as well.
No, 100%. And you're absolutely right. You've been on this since the beginning of the year. I think I mentioned it as well. Like, to just write off this incredible talent, and he's more than a talent, like, he's big time. He's a fierce, ferocious, just killer. He's a killer is what he is. And he lets you hear it. He lets you know about it when he does it. And a guy that elevates his game in those moments that you're just going to write off as a sub 25-year-old it was insane to me. And then you added the Kyrie piece, and I understood maybe on that perspective, especially coming into the year. We haven't seen this from Kyrie in so long. We haven't seen him be stable. We haven't seen it just be about basketball. That makes some sense. But to throw Luka out and just essentially say they don't have a chance to win the West, when in any given series, he's going to be at least one of the best two players in the series, and that's really only if he's going up against Joker. I didn't understand that. I didn't want to see them when it was Clippers Mavs. I was texting friends. I don't want to see Dallas as a Thunder fan. I don't want to see Luka and Kyrie combined. That's going to be trouble. Game one, people are like, "Hey, OKC's good. They got this." I was never that confident in that because I always knew from that end like how good these guys are and how much he's getting his guys involved, and that like one dimensional or the heliocentric style. He has some of that. There's no denying that that's there, but he also picks his spots so well, and he does move the ball. And truly, like as when you're going against him, you're hoping that the ball's not going to be in his hands. You feel like your defense got bailed out when it's Derrick Jones trying to come up with something or PJ Washington trying to create. Like when it's Luka, even when the shot clock's running down, you're scared to death because that's who that guy is. That's what that talent level is. So he's going to have the chance. You're absolutely right with an early title to go on this trajectory because you know his numbers will be there. So if he can add the rings to it, all of a sudden we're talking about another Bill Simmons turn, but a Pantheon type of guy.
And the other thing on top of that too is we always talk about guys kind of getting smaller in the playoffs, and that's one thing that you just can't really say about Luka Doncic to this point. I mean, this was his sixth year of regular season. This is his fourth playoff appearance because they didn't make it last year. I think that hurt him in the narrative game, right? When we did the storyline draft, Cody, as a preview for the NBA season, one of my selections was the Dallas Mavericks, but it wasn't necessarily a positive. If you remember what I picked in that storyline draft, it was the Dallas Mavericks at large because I thought that their season can go either way. I was like, I can see this going well and they could work out awesomely and be in a position to contend, or I could see this thing blowing up and going really poorly to a point where I'm asking if Luka Doncic wants to be on another team next year. This is where we were at the start of this season. Part of that was because they tanked last year. They didn't make the playoffs last year. And by doing so, they got to pick Derek Lively, who is now a huge part of their team in the playoffs as a rookie, which is something that's unheard of. But we talk about all these guys frequently in the playoffs and all of the people who've never won a championship before. It's all right, what are they doing, in the playoffs versus in the regular season? And I think Luka even started a little bit slow here in this playoff. Clearly, he wasn't himself in that Clippers series, and his numbers kind of showed that that was the case. And here we are still entering the finals, 29 points, 9.5 rebounds, 9 assists for Luka Doncic, shooting 80% from the free throw line, 34% from three. Like, he is doing the thing. But also in his prior two playoff appearances, where one of them was in the conference finals, the other one was just a 7-game series. Actually, was that 7-game series? Was he hurt or did he just make the first round? I forget. When he was 21 years old, though, in his second ever playoffs, he averaged 36 points a game, right? 36 and 10 is what he averaged in 7 games in the playoffs. So even though his numbers are a little bit worse this year, it is incredibly obvious at this point that it's like, all right, all these conversations we have about all these guys who come up small in big moments, who don't get better in the playoffs, who don't elevate their teammates. I don't think any of those things are true for Luka Doncic. So for some reason, everyone was okay saying like, yeah, he's a top 5 player, but he's definitely not top 2 or the guy. And now I guess finally you can say he could be that guy. And a lot of us knew that he's been that guy this entire time.
I couldn't agree more. I don't even feel the need to add any more on Luka and his abilities. I do want to throw 2 more quick storylines at you, if you don't mind. 2 Dallas-sided storylines.
Okay, I'll hold Tatum for after this then.
Yep, I got 2 Dallas-sided storylines. One, Kyrie Irving has a chance to essentially take a magic wand and eraser, whatever you want to call it, over the last like 4 years or so, and almost be like, we got a title with LeBron, we've got a title with Luka, he's got 2 championships, and like those are the points of his career that will come to the forefront and mostly get remembered. And you can almost just erase and take away all of the negative that was the Brooklyn Nets run and everything in between. So he's got a real opportunity there. And then I'm thinking Jason Kidd. How about Jason Kidd getting
Yes.
solidified as a head coach? Jason Kidd, who's had multiple chances, different opportunities. One of the, especially for our generation growing up, one of the best point guards that we watched growing up. I think anyone who knew basketball would say one of the highest basketball IQs. When he went over to the Knicks, I think even though it's his latter part of his career, you would say similar. And so Jason Kidd's opportunity to solidify this part of his career as a head coach, that could be something special for him.
Jason Kidd was so good that growing up, I liked the Nets. How about that? I'm like a diehard Knicks fan, and growing up in the tri-state area in New York, I'm like, this Jason Kidd guy is freaking awesome. I think he's my favorite player, right? And then like he created this whole thing of how he played the game. He made assists cool in the 21st century, because obviously you can look back to other players in the past, like Magic Johnson, obviously, right? He made assists very, very cool. But then we were in this point of point guards where scoring point guards became, hot in the streets, if you will. And you had Stephon Marbury and Steve Francis just like cooking and putting up crazy numbers. And yeah, they got their fair share of assists and whatnot. But Jason Kidd wasn't even caring about scoring. He just cared about letting everyone eat and winning basketball games. And then he had also a very weird coaching trajectory. Him and Kyrie Irving have a lot in common, from Jason Kidd, the coach, to Kyrie Irving, the player. Like Jason Kidd went to the Nets to be their coach. People like forget that even happened because it was so weird, and he was doing weird stuff, and he wasn't exactly like a likable person at that point in time. Then he goes to Milwaukee, and it didn't go well. Giannis loved him, but it was bad, and it didn't work, and it was all these things. Like he was like knocking over people's drinks on the sideline to try to get an extra timeout. Like he was doing weird stuff. And Cody, we forget about all of it. And we, as a collective society and NBA fan base here, like we have amnesia. We really do. Because if you're winning, nothing matters. None of that crap matters. And he will now have a ring as a player on the Dallas Mavericks. And if they win the championship here, a ring as a coach. And he pantheons himself as an all-time NBA person, right? Which is a really cool thing to do. Like how many players were key contributors on a championship team and the coach of a championship team? Probably one hand, right? Like if you count player coach Bill Russell, maybe was Doc Rivers on the championship team? No, he wasn't on the championship teams for the Knicks. He was on the teams that almost won a championship.
Phil Jackson as a player.
Phil Jackson, but he wasn't even like that key of a player. He was just a decent player. But like the point stands. Kyrie Irving and Jason Kidd together have these really weird stretches of people thinking that they suck as human beings, nobody liking them, they can't do the thing they're supposed to do, right? Jay Kidd almost got fired last year. Kyrie Irving almost had no suitors last year as a free agent, right? Like he was thinking about possibly having to take a minimum to go play with LeBron and the Lakers again. And now he's playing some of the best basketball of his career. Some of the Kyrie Irving point, however, is a little frustrating to me, Cody, because there are two segments I should say there are three segments of fans in the NBA. There are one segment who think Kyrie Irving is like the greatest player ever. And when I say that, I don't mean obviously like Michael Jordan, but there are Kyrie Irving fans who think like he does no wrong. He is the most deadly weapon to ever step foot on a basketball court. And I understand why they say that. I just vehemently disagree with it because I know what's happened for the last 6 years. There are the other people who hate Kyrie Irving, who say he's a cancer, he can't do anything right, he blew up all these teams. That's the other end of the spectrum. And then there are people in the middle, which I think I try to land on, even though I end up being more critical than not a lot of times with Kyrie, because these people drive me insane. I was just with my buddy this weekend at a bachelor party, and he was kind of joking, but kind of serious. He's like, Kyrie Irving's the best basketball player I've ever seen. He's the best of all time. And he didn't mean like the greatest player of all time. He was just in such awe of what this guy does on a basketball court that he has to say anything he possibly could to defend the man. Kyrie Irving's career doesn't touch some of the stars we have in the league right now. And I know what people say, oh, he won the ring. He might do it again. Guess what? He sucked for the past 6 years to his standard. He wasn't Kyrie Irving to Kyrie Irving's standard for 6 years. He's never been a number one on a team. And people want to say all these things about him, about how great he is. And I just can't get all the way there, but I can at least separate the where he is right now and the way he's playing and how impressive he is and the beauty of basketball that he plays with and all this great stuff. So I don't even know what to say about Kyrie. I get driven crazy when people are like, well, now he's going to be the best sidekick of all time. It's like, what? Scottie Pippen, bro. What are we doing? Oscar Robinson was the number 2 for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. What are we talking about, right? So I get very heated with Kyrie Irving, but I get it. I get why he has people in a tizzy, because you don't see people play basketball like this man with the pure talent that he pulls off. And now Pat Boyle is on the show. Pat Boyle, you jumped right in here. Kyrie Irving is absolutely just somebody who grabs the attention of the NBA media and the NBA fan and drives people in absolutely different directions. Which way does Kyrie Irving drive Pat Boyle?
Oh, you guys should know. By the way, good evening. Happy to be a part of a championship podcast here with you, Pete Kennedy, with you, Cody O'Connor. Missed you. Feel like I haven't seen Cody in, I don't know, a couple days or something. You guys know what direction he drives me. Look, when it comes to Kyrie Irving, I am a lover of many things. And I am an optimist when it comes to many things. And there are many people and many teams that I want to see do well. And even if they're not my favorite teams or favorite players, most people I don't have any ill will towards. When I see them succeed, it's, I give them the credit where it's due. I give them the respect where it's due. When it comes to Kyrie Irving, I take on a Kendrick Lamar level of hater. Because there are not a lot of things that give me more joy when watching the NBA than watching Kyrie Irving fail. And the stunt that he pulled in Brooklyn, stunts that he pulled in Brooklyn, the stunts that he pulled in Boston, basically, like you said, Pete, underachieving for the better part of the last 5 years and always looking for an excuse, never really living up to his talent, and just not being accountable, not being available more so than anything for those teams. It grew a dark pit in my stomach for him. Him and James Harden, probably the two guys that I like to watch fail more than any other NBA player in the last 10 years. And yet, Cody's been calling me out for it. Cody's been saying it. You got to put the respect on his name where it's due. And in regards to these playoffs, and really this year, the defense that he has played, again, I guess when it comes to Kyrie Irving, we have to say it. The accountability that he has shown, the availability that he has shown, along with the undeniable handles that he has, which may be one of the best of all time. The ability to finish at the layup off, finish at the bucket, layup off balance, through traffic, and then on top of it, the defense that he has played, helping to shut down Anthony Edwards, helping to limit the OKC stars. It's been incredible. Like you can hear me hesitating because it hurts to say it, but he has been that damn good. He has been the perfect sidekick for Luka Doncic. He has understood this is Luka's team. Mark Cuban has said it. Jason Kidd, to a certain degree, has said it. He knows the role that he has to play. He has played it brilliantly. He has played it beautifully. There are times where he scores 2 points in the first quarter, 4 points in the first half, and then takes over for 20, 25 in the second half. Like we saw, I believe it was game 5. He had 4 points in the first quarter, 30 the rest of the way. Times where it was at game 1 or game 2 where he took over in the first quarter and then let Luka take over and finish down the stretch. He's been a consummate teammate. I can't believe I'm actually uttering those words. He's been a consummate teammate both in the role that he has to play on this team and in the silent veteran leader that he needed to be to steer this team through the playoffs. They have not lost back-to-back games this postseason, and Kyrie Irving is a massive reason why. So, yeah, that really hurt. That really hurt me to say all that, but that's the truth.
That was so well said. and so fair from you. I have nothing to add. You put it perfectly. That's exactly what he's done. It's what we hope to see from the man, and we're finally getting, because when it is just basketball with him, when it is strictly basketball, and this is the point that I've been trying to say, I mean, we know what we're getting, and the defensive side of it, what he's done, and his ability to, like you said, just pick his spots and do it so perfectly, and be the ultimate second option and sidekick. And I mean, he's done it so well. It is the largest part of their success this season. No one person can do it by themselves. But for you to throw that credit his way the way you did, Pat, you're such a professional, and God, that's why I love you.
All right.
If I really wanted to,
Love
I could, if I really wanted to, I could find enough things in that clip and make a clip on social media of Pat just eviscerating Kyrie Irving and put it online. And I'm telling you, the Kyrie Irving defenders come out hard, right? Like, I have the TikTok comments, the YouTube short comments of people being like, you think Jalen Brunson is better than Kyrie Irving? I'm like, yes, right now I do, because he does more or whatever it is, right? But I have enough in that clip of Pat that I could cut it in such a way to make him just eviscerate him, and people wouldn't know all the fair things that he said about Kyrie Irving, because it's all true. And at the end of the day, the reason why you get so frustrated, Pat, and I get so frustrated with Kyrie Irving is because we know what he could do, right? Like, for everyone who sits here and just praises the hell out of him for all of his talent, they choose to not care about all the times he fell short to his own standard. We who watch this league, addicts, literally gambling and just basketball addicts, we watched him be incredible, and then we watch him come up short time and time again and just not show up, right? So it's completely 100% fair to feel multiple ways about Kyrie Irving, but everything that Pat said is undeniable right now about how damn good he's been. And yeah, it is what it is. I just, for one, I can't get to a point to put him in all-time conversations next to anyone who should be, and I'm doing air quotes here, should be his peers. He has 3 All-NBA teams in his career, none of which were first-team All-NBA. I've had arguments with people who say that Kyrie Irving has had a better career than James Harden, and I think that's asinine. And that might really put Pat up a wall, because those are his 2 most favorite players. But I don't know, Pat, what do you think about that? From a career perspective, yeah, Kyrie has 1 ring and now is playing in his second finals. I don't think he sniffs the career of James Harden. Am I wrong for saying that?
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. What he did to help, basically at points carry LeBron in that championship winning postseason for Cleveland, I don't think James Harden has ever done that. And I mean, it's only 1, right? I mean, that's really the only time that Kyrie Irving before this season has really been that dude in the playoffs, in the postseason. And he was young, and it was 10, 11 years ago at this point. We thought there was going to be so many more moments like that to come. In totality, off regular season encapsulated, and the stats and the numbers and some of the records that James Harden has broken, and the way that James Harden changed basketball. Yes, I would agree with you. The fact that he is a MVP winner, the fact that he is a 4-time, 5-time MVP finalist. I would say James Harden unequivocally to this point has a better pound for pound career than Kyrie Irving. Yes.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's just something that drives me crazy sometimes with these Kyrie stands. But then again, he might just show up here in the playoffs and ball out and hit a game winner, and everyone who's defended him for the past 6 years is going to be like, "Listen, I've been telling you, I've been telling you that this is Kyrie Irving and he's the best, this and that and this and that," and it's going to be hard to deny it. But again, real recognize real, because at the end of the day, when he is balling out, it's undeniable what he does on the basketball court. All right, let's pop over to the Boston Celtics side of things. Pat, just for reference really quick, we hit Luka, we hit Kidd, we hit some Mavericks topics, and we're going to talk more Tatum now, and then we'll get into our actual preview / prediction. Jayson Tatum has a chance to solidify his place in a top 5 conversation, let alone maybe just the top 5 straight up. As we talked about it earlier in the show, as of now, most people are in agreement in some order. You have Joker, Luka Doncic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And that 5 spot is kind of vacant right now. Some people say Tatum's already there. Some people say it's one of 5 other people who could be in that spot. But in this series, at this point in time, with all the success that he's had to his young career here, Jayson Tatum has a chance to solidify a legacy of his own here with a key performance in winning the championship for the Boston Celtics. The question becomes, what's the ceiling on where he can put himself after this NBA Finals? And then what you guys expect from Jayson Tatum, who, despite all the success, has had some weird moments in the playoffs, just not being able to reach the highest of highs and touch what those top 3 people are in the league. So how high can he go? And then what expectation do you guys have? Cody, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, Tatum is one of those guys, I've said it before, especially from the gambling side, that he's usually tough to predict, tough to bet on game to game. In totality, what he's done for this playoffs, though, is the fact that he's done it without just scoring, that he's been able to kind of see that another guy's got it going and take his foot off the gas and let Jaylen Brown cook or let Derek White cook or even let Drew Holiday if it gets to that. And them having Porzingis back is going to be huge. So the fact that he's been here, he's been to the finals. This is what their 5th time winning the Eastern Conference, 4th time winning the Eastern Conference, whatever it is. They've been through a lot. And the point is, they've been through it together. He's been through it now enough that he knows exactly what to expect in this moment. And I do expect that he's going to elevate and rise to the occasion. I think he's going to be the guy that we at least expect him to be, to the back of the baseball card at minimum. I don't think he's going to fall flat on his face by any means. I think he'll be the leader. And I expect a ton from him because, like I said, he's been here before. This isn't the first time around. It's no longer a young team, and they're a relatively heavy favorite. So Tatum's got to show up. He's got to step up, and I do expect that he will.
Yeah, this is actually only the 2nd time they've been to the finals with this core. 2nd time they've been to the finals since 2010. Lost in the conference finals last year.
I'm
I think
thinking
you
more
meant Eastern Conference final
Correct.
appearances.
Yep,
Conference finals, they've been there now 6 out of the last 8 years.
Yep, that's
So
more what I meant.
They went and lost there in 2017 to LeBron, lost in 2018 to LeBron, lost the conference finals in 2020, and then got to the finals, NBA finals 2 years ago, lost to the Warriors, obviously lost to the Heat last year, back in the finals this year. But it feels like this core has been around kind of, really like longer than it has. And, it was a young Jayson Tatum and a really, really young Jaylen Brown just a couple of years ago. I mean, these guys they're in the primes of their career now, right? I mean, they're, mid-20s, 26, 25, 27 years old here. And it kind of feels like it doesn't feel like it's now or never, but it's also, when we talk about so long in the NBA, it's, all these great dynasties, Jordan, the Warriors, the Spurs, they had to take their lumps for like 2 or 3 years before they got their ring and then before they started to dominate. And although you guys know, and Pete, you're right there with me as diehard Knicks fans, we think that it's the Knicks time next year and the Knicks could do this and the Knicks could be good enough to end this little, I don't even know if you would call it a mini dynasty, but end this run, this reign that Boston has basically had on the Eastern Conference. I'm not going to deny that they are in a tremendous spot. Brad Stevens going from the head coach to the front office. He has built an unbelievable roster, adding Kristaps Porzingis, adding Drew Holiday to an already great core with good veteran players that come off the bench for them and some really good scrappy role players like a Peyton Pritchard, and now a 3-point shooter, Sam Hauser, who I'm sure will maybe have one moment, one game in the finals where he hits 6 threes. Maybe bet that whenever you're feeling it.
Hey, now.
It feels like the Celtics have to win the finals this year. As great, even though Luka Doncic, and I don't know if you guys have said this yet, Luka Doncic is the best player on the floor, and I think that's undeniable. But the Celtics are the better team, and they've proved that in the regular season. Even though Dallas did a great job at the trade deadline, their GM Nico Harrison, who I believe just got an extension, the trade for Gafford, the additions they made to this team, the overhaul that they went through as an identity defensively, Boston needs to win this final or it's a massive disappointment here. And Tatum's got to be the one that carries them. Sure, there's going to be a game or two where Jaylen Brown goes for 35. Sure, there's going to be a game or two where Derek White goes for 25 or even 30. And, if Porzingis is healthy, there's going to be a game or two where he, is hitting some big-time shots. And Jayson Tatum doesn't have to carry them every game. He doesn't have to carry them for 5 or 6 games, but he's going to have to carry them overall through this series here. And Tatum, kind of had a shitty NBA Finals his first go-around 2 years ago against Golden State. Only averaged 21.5 points per game, shot 37% from the field. He did shoot the three well, but he shot 37% from the field and 66% from the free throw line. He has never had a playoff series, let alone a postseason like that, the rest of basically his career, where he has shot under 40% and under 70% from the free throw line. So he was too small for the moment 2 years ago. And Boston should have won that series. They could have won that series. We look back on it now. That was basically the last year of the Warriors dynasty. They have not been the same team since. The last 2 years has been very obvious. So that was Boston's chance to rise up and end the Golden State dynasty. Then they weren't ready for the moment. They have to be ready now, and Tatum has to be ready. He can't shoot those numbers that I just said. He can't shoot 37% from the field. He can't go to the free throw line and miss 4 or 5 free throws a game, especially with how often he gets there. And he can't underperform. Like, for the most part, he has this postseason. He hasn't been very good. They haven't needed him, but he hasn't been very good. And a lot of games where he has not been the guy in the last 5 minutes. His clutch stats, I think the Inside the NBA showed it the one time. His shooting percentage and just how clutch he's been the last 5 minutes a game so far hasn't been very good. Now, luckily, they have such a deep team that they've been able to overcome it. That's not going to happen against Dallas. Boston needs their star, their superstar of the last 5 years, Jayson Tatum. He has to show up. Otherwise, they won't win this series. They're not going to be able to get by with Jaylen Brown and Derek White having a big game while Tatum, gets his numbers, gets 23, 24 points, but doesn't really make the big impact down the stretch. They're not going to win the finals with Kristaps Porzingis going for 30 and maybe Al Horford hitting a couple threes, and yet they lose 114, 111 because we know Dallas has no problem winning games that are within 5 points. They showed it against Minnesota. They showed it against OKC. This team is unbelievably clutch. So Boston finally needs, if they want to win their first title in 15 years here, they need Tatum to step up and be the top 5 player that most people think he is, that I think he's bordering on. He can cement that. He can cement his legacy as one of the best players with Jokic, with Luka, with Giannis. 2 of the 3 having already won a title. He can cement himself firmly in that conversation if he is the best player for the Celtics in this series and they win the title. He has to. I don't know if he can. I'm being honest. There's still a lot he needs to prove to me. Sure, he's a great first-team All-NBA caliber player for the last 3-4 years now. He has, I think, up until this year, he has gotten better with each passing season. He didn't need to be that great this year just because they're so freaking deep, right? He didn't need to average 28, 29 points per game. But, man, if there's ever – he has undoubtedly the most pressure on a player in this NBA Finals. It's Tatum, and it's not even close for me. And I just don't know if he can prove it. He has to. I don't know if he can.
And that brings me to probably the third part of the 2-part question I asked you guys before. Is it possible the Celtics can win without the best version of Tatum? And is that actually the biggest negative that could happen to him personally, right? Like if the Celtics go out there and do win off finals MVP, Jaylen Brown or Derek White or whatever it is, what's that scenario look like, Pat? Because you just described it if they lose. What if they win and that's how he plays? Because like you said, the numbers aren't pretty for Jayson Tatum in these playoffs. The counting stats are pretty nice. Like he's averaging 26. He's averaging over 10 rebounds, which is awesome. 6 assists, which is actually really, really great for a guy like Tatum who, wasn't a great playmaker earlier in his career. Like there's a lot of good that he's done, a lot of nice things, the way that he attacks the game, but there's all these things that you just are longing for more from all the time. So what happens now if the Celtics win and someone else is the MVP? And we're looking at a a field goal percentage of 41% from the field or 38% from the field for Tatum, and he never clicks. Maybe he has that one great game. Everything else is mediocre. What does that mean for the Celtics and for Jayson Tatum?
I think it means maybe that after next season or, after 2025, 2026, that year he's got a player option. He could opt out of it and ask for a super max. But I think after next year, if Jayson Tatum has a lackluster to his standard NBA Finals and Boston is just too deep, where again they get the averages from Derek White and Porzingis and Jaylen Brown, and it's somebody other than Tatum that carries them for the majority of this series in the last 5 minutes. Maybe I could see a future where in 3 years Jayson Tatum's on a different team. I mean,
that's weird.
I know, but you can't
weird to think about.
You can't pay all these guys. They're paying Jaylen Brown $50 million plus a year now. His supermax is just in the beginning. Drew Holiday's getting $30+ million a year on the books for the next 3 years after this. Porzingis, tough to imagine a team where they don't have him because he's just such a unicorn, a 4 or a 5 that can stretch the floor. I mean, look how much they have modernized their offense this year and how they, they're so tough to beat because everybody can hit shots on the perimeter. You can't leave any one of them open. Porzingis is a big reason why they do that. And then Derek White is an unrestricted free agent after next year. So is it Derek White that goes? Do you lose your point guard who is such a good facilitator and really who this offense runs through a lot of the time? Or do you say the best player on your team, yeah, you know what? I think we can win titles without him. It's gonna be a tough conversation that Brad Stevens has to have. But if they do win the title with a lackluster Jayson Tatum this postseason, I think you start to think, wow, do they need to pay this guy $55-60 million a year for the next 6 years here, or can they get it done with somebody else and pay the rest of the guys on this team?
Those contracts are a big part of the reason why they have to win this year. Like you said, like how much longer this team looks like this, I'm not sure of. How much longer you're going to get Al Horford to look like this, I'm really not sure of. So it is make or break. It's now or never. But they're the better team. They've been here. Like you said, like each team kind of has to go through it, go to the conference finals. It's very rare that you just kind of leap all the way through unless you make these huge additions in an off season that you just can make it all the way to the finals and win a title. And so Dallas,
even that's rare.
Well, yeah, right. So Dallas has been through some of it. You're right, because you think about first year LeBron with Miami, it didn't work out just right away. Took a year with Boston, Boston do it right away with Pierce and Garnett. They might have done it right away. Actually,
yeah.
They might be the
might have been their first year. Yeah,
but that's an exception. It's not the common. But they have to do it right now, right away. And Tatum, like he can be the guy. And for your question, if he's not amazing, as long as he doesn't fall flat on his face and horrific, I don't think it kills his legacy or hurts it because it just shows a ring. Steph Curry didn't win the Finals MVP his first year, 2015. It was Iguodala. I don't think that I don't think it should have been Iggy. But the point is, people aren't looking at Steph Curry and saying, well, he's only a one-time Finals MVP. No, he's one of the best point guards of all time. The ring does so much to your legacy. So as long as he's not, like, they're not winning in spite of Tatum and he's putting up his numbers. And the fact of the matter is he impacts the game defensively so much, and he's going to be the guy on Luka, I think, at a lot of these times and a lot of those clutch moments where maybe his clutchest plays of the game aren't on the offensive side of the ball. Maybe it's getting a stop on Luka in under a minute in a tie game or up 3 and securing the win on that side of the floor, which he's more than capable of. So if he could do that, if he could go to the rim a little bit more, because I hate when he just starts getting into that ISO step back, kind of settling for those mid-range to step back threes. If he can get to the rim and then start facilitating, he'll be just fine. And they have enough guys that it wouldn't be crazy that someone else wins Finals MVP. He just can't fall flat on his face, and then his legacy's fine.
And we'll run through some props later when we get to the predictions and preview and the quick hitters and whatnot. But I just think it's very interesting. And I'm happy that you just brought that up, Cody, because I think it would be selling him just a little bit short to say he has to shoot X% for him to earn his keep in this finals. The way he's played defense has been incredible. I mentioned this last week on the pod. From my heart of hearts as a basketball fan, the way that he plays the game absolutely vibes with the guy I want to be the man on my team. Like, he doesn't force too much. He's not good at forcing, which makes it worse, right? Like, when Luka forces, it's all good, baby. He's getting his shots, right? Like, sometimes you need Jokic to force more. You never say Tatum force more because he doesn't force that good. However, the way he plays the game is the right way. He is getting better at passing and playmaking. He does play incredible defense. He can guard. He was making Halliburton so uncomfortable when he got switched on to Halliburton. And then he can guard up to bigger guys. Like you said, he'll probably guard Luka Doncic a lot this year in this series. So, yeah, I think it's fair to play both sides there. Absolutely interesting to see how Tatum does in this finals and what that means for him, for better, for worse, for everything in between. But he's got to show up and this team's got to show up. So let's do this quickly. Let's start rapid firing some of these storylines here just to give Pat and the viewers a quick little recap of what me and Cody talked about in the storyline outcome here. We said Luka's story number 1, Tatum's story number 2, and then we mentioned Kyrie and Jayson Kidd. What's the next storyline? Who or what is the next storyline that pops out? Let's make sure we hit these guys quick. Pat, what's one that jumps out to you?
Porzingis going against his old team and his calf, right? I mean, if he's been out forever, it seems like, and they've not needed him, basically for the last 2 series here. How his calf is and how he's able to hold up through this series is massive, because I don't think, again, unless Tatum and Brown both just perform like, MVPs, the two of them together in this series, if Tatum averages 35 points and Brown averages 32 points, that's the only way that Boston can overcome it. But, the way that they've been playing and the way that they have played for most of their postseason careers, the Celtics need Porzingis. They need everybody to beat Dallas. I know how great they were. I know that they swept aside Cleveland and they swept aside Indiana without him. They need him in this series. So his calf, however healthy he is going to be a big factor in the fact that he's going against his old team that traded him basically, was it for Spencer Dinwiddie and a pack of Skittles to the Washington Wizards just 2 years ago after he was always hurt. And, again, another guy that flashed and looked like he was never going to be healthy and never going to be able to help out a championship winning team. Now he's got a chance to stick it to Nico Harrison and the Dallas Mavericks.
I think to Pat's point earlier about Boston, if they do win, can they keep this all together? Is this the next start of the next run? Is this a blip on the radar? Can they actually keep this core together? Can they keep them healthy together? I think that's an overarching storyline, because I think Dallas, for the most part, not too much is going to change. If Boston wins, can they keep this group? Is Front Row Joe the guy going forward? Does he get his praise? And how they can structure those contracts to make it work, because Tatum is going to have to get paid. I thought it was this offseason that he was eligible for it, but whenever it is, it's very soon that he's going to get that supermax.
All right, I'm going to go next. And on the Porzingis point, I absolutely agree. His health / impact is going to be huge, and his ability to stay on the floor. Because I was thinking about this earlier. It's like you never want to root or bet on injuries because A, you don't want to see it. B, they're unpredictable. But if you had to just say, do you think Porzingis is playing every game in the series? There's going to be a strong part of you saying, like, I could see him missing one. I could see him get, you know what I mean? Like, you could just see it and you hope it doesn't happen, but it absolutely means a lot to the Celtics moving forward. All right, my next storyline is trade deadlines. Because right now, you have 2 teams who went about the trade deadline a little bit differently. And you could argue it makes great sense. The Celtics were the number 1 seed in the NBA. They didn't need much. They were already deep. They already had a lot of great players, but they didn't do a lot in making the team better because they didn't really have to at the trade deadline. On the other hand, we had the Dallas Mavericks team, who was very much middling in the Western Conference, wasn't really sure what their identity was. And they went out and made 2 big-time trades. And by big time, it's not like they're superstars, but they're star role players at this point in time in this playoffs, in Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington. And we know that this is a copycat league. These trades worked out. They don't often work out like this, Cody and Pat. However, if the Dallas Mavericks go in and win a championship, does this inspire teams to be ultra assertive and aggressive at next year and the year after that trade deadline? I can see it. I can see those teams now in the Mavericks ether. If you think you have one of those guys who's a number one and you say, oh, there's a decent role player here in Charlotte, well, we're going to make him a great role player. And I think if the Mavericks win, that makes a trickle effect for the league to absolutely cook at trade deadline time and for all of us to be saying, who's the next PJ Washington at the trade deadline? It sounds silly to say it with his name out loud, but I absolutely think if the Mavericks win, this creates a trickle to the rest of the league that when it comes down to the trade deadline and you think you have the remote chance to win a championship, you do whatever you can to add whatever you can, whether it be the big that you're missing, the shooter that you're missing, or the role player that you just desperately need. And you're going to start talking yourself into these guys who may be putting up numbers for bad teams or maybe sitting on a bench on a good team and saying they're going to change our whole trajectory.
Yeah, I think there's teams that do this every year already. I just, again, how many trades work out as well as Daniel Gafford has? And, again, Daniel Gafford making chase down blocks, making huge, they've turned into Lob City, the alley-oops that he's had, the second chances, the offensive rebounds. Like, again, I don't want to understate this, again, and Pete, I appreciate you because I was using your league pass 2 years ago. All of this past year, I got it complimentary of DraftKings. You mentioned before, hashtag not an addict. Daniel Gafford was getting punked when he was in Washington. Like, I mean, I used to bet the opposing center whenever the Wizards played a team because I knew that Daniel Gafford was going to give up like 20 and 10 to whoever they were playing. And this guy has transformed into a winning player as soon as he got into a team that had a championship aspirations. So, like, that doesn't always work out. And then, the addition of PJ Washington, too. We've seen PJ Washington. PJ Washington has been PJ Washington, to his credit. Like, he hasn't changed. Daniel Gafford changed. PJ Washington is still a guy that can go 2 for 9 for 3, but the 2 threes he hits are massive threes. So, like, he hasn't changed. And the Lakers, I mean, look at the trades they made last year, right? The trade deadline of 2023, adding Rui Hachimura, adding D'Angelo Russell. I mean, they almost worked, right? I mean, they got him to the conference finals, and then they got punked by Denver. There's teams that make trades at the trade deadline, and they fail miserably. So I don't think this is necessarily going to inspire any team to be assertive more so than they normally will be. I just think that we look at these trades that Nico Harrison and the Mavericks front office made this year, and they were home runs. I mean, they, again, they're not getting all NBA players, but 2 role players that are starters, fringe starters, that have just been absolutely huge in the roles that they have to play, the roles they've carved out for themselves.
I'm sorry. I have to. PJ Washington transformed into Michael Jordan himself for like 4 games against my Oklahoma City Thunder. The man literally took the entire city and put him on his shoulders. I couldn't believe what I was watching for him. Then he did turn back a little bit, but for those 4 games, there was a transformation, like an out-of-body PJ Washington experience. And it sucked to watch from my end.
Okay, fair, Cody. That is very fair.
I had to get that off my chest. I'm still a little slow.
I was focusing mostly on the Western Conference Finals, but yes, you are absolutely correct. He could not miss a shot for a solid 3-4 games.
And Pat, for the record, I think you're right. But maybe I'll say this. Maybe it's more in the line of the media and how we all overreact to every trade next year. You know what I mean? Like, maybe it won't be the GMs who are going to overreact because they all do what they do and they do make the trades that you're talking about already. But I think as an NBA collective, like the media and fans, we're going to see next year, Kevin Huerter get traded to the Philadelphia 76ers at the deadline. It's be like, can Kevin Huerter be the next PJ Washington in the NBA Finals? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think this is going to happen with PJ and freaking Gafford. And obviously the Gafford.
No, that's a good call there. I can absolutely see Kevin Huerter getting traded next year. I believe he's under contract. I believe he's going to stay with the Kings if they don't do well. But yeah, I mean, and look what the Knicks did 2 years ago, adding Josh Hart, Josh Hart, that changed them. And this year, it wasn't at the deadline, but it was early. It was a trade that we all had hoped was coming in one way or another, getting OG. And if OG was able to stay healthy, maybe we're having that freaking goddamn conversation about the Knicks. I believe we are.
Yeah.
Well, can I
That's
say,
right.
am I mistaken or wrong? Was it not a pretty small, like pretty boring trade deadline this year? And
very much.
I could think of it from Oklahoma City side where I'm like poking, that meme, like do something. So maybe more teams will kind of look at it like you're saying and take more risks, because I do remember this being a very slow trade deadline.
There were no stars on the block this year. There were none. And I do think the play-in has been great for that. I mean, frankly, maybe it hurts on the transaction front for the hot stove of the NBA trade deadline, because we've seen teams now at lower seeds make conference finals, makes finals like every year now since the play-in's been a thing. We're seeing play-in teams do, win series. Like the Lakers were in the conference finals last year. Pacers weren't in the play-in, but still, like, they were in that vicinity and made the conference finals this year. The Heat last year as well. Like, we've seen it happen now. And maybe those teams are now less giving of their talent because they're like, all right, we're going to be in the dance. We got to give this a shot. But it is just kind of interesting. But there was no stars in the block this year, Cody. Cody, you got another storyline
just
for
really
us?
quickly. I'm looking back at some of the other trades that happened at this deadline. The Patrick Beverley for Cam Payne and a second-round pick between Milwaukee and Philly. That's an intriguing one to go back at. Your Thunder, Cody, getting Gordon Hayward, I don't think that worked nearly as well as you would have liked it to.
Irrelevant.
The Sixers getting Buddy Hield for Marcus Morris and Furkan Korkmaz, who maybe got defected back to Turkey at some point, because I don't know if I remember seeing him play a game after November of this year or after January of this
Definitely
year.
Not.
And I think that was mostly the big ones for any playoff relevant teams. The Heat getting Scary Terry from Charlotte and giving them Kyle Lowry, who then ended up with Philadelphia. And then before the deadline, when Indiana got Siakam from Toronto as well.
That was a big one too.
Right. And that one paid dividends as well. Clearly, they made the conference finals. Even though, however they got there. It is what it is. Cody, any other storylines for this before we make predictions?
To be honest, I feel like we hit most of them. So I don't have any more off the top of my head. I digress.
Pat, any other storyline you want to shout?
Digress would be the right word there, Cody. Good job.
At least I picked it up on the second try.
You did. I would say the. Yeah, I don't know if I got anything.
I mean, that's it. I mean, I guess we could have given Jaylen Brown some more runway, right? A guy who was maligned last year in the playoffs, so we'll give him a quick shout. Oh, this guy can't dribble. This guy, he's not going to get it done. He's got no left hand. All these things were very negative about Jaylen Brown. And to his credit, he got the contract and got criticized for getting the money and has done nothing but earn it since. So very impressive out of him. And weirdly, I think people in general have more trust in him to do Jaylen Brown than for Jayson Tatum to do Jayson Tatum. And maybe Brown's ceiling isn't as high as Tatum's, but I feel like no one's expecting a Brown fall off when some people are expecting a Tatum struggle fest in certain aspects. And that might be because of Brown's physicality and his relentlessness to kind of attack and whatnot. But yeah, I think I would say
the only other thing maybe is Joe Mazzulla. I mean, I know you guys hit Jason Kidd heavy out of the beginning here, but it just still feels like at times this Boston team is just with that, they don't have a head coach. Joe Mazzulla does nothing. What can he do to actually get credit? What is he going to do to guard Luka Doncic, or what coaching mastermind is he going to pull off in the last what rotation is he going to have on the floor in the last 5 minutes that Boston wins a game or comes from behind from 10 points down with 8 minutes to go and we're wow, great move by Joe Mazzulla. I feel like this guy is only going to be the scapegoat if things somehow go wrong. If it's not Tatum, it feels like Joe Mazzulla is the next biggest scapegoat in this series if Boston loses.
That's a good call. It was I know Bill Simmons was calling for O'Shea Brissett in the last series. Why are we not seeing him here? And it is what it. And I know he's kind of an irrelevant player. I saw your reaction there, Pat. But to the point of you have a leash with these teams that you're playing against. If you're Boston, why are you not trying some of these guys? I think when the Knicks were playing the Pacers, we felt the same thing. It's TJ McConnell has been unstoppable. Why is he getting pulled? And then you saw him kind of get a little more runway, but we were kind of crushing Carlisle for that same thing. I think Mazzulla has to be smart enough to push a button or two. And the question also becomes, how do you decide to deploy your Kyrie and Luka defenders? You have Drew and Derek White, who are two of the best defensive guards in the league. And you got Brown and Tatum, who could also guard guards and wings. So how do you deploy those minutes on those guys? Because we know with Minnesota, the best defense in the league, everyone's saying, right at the end of the post game when Minnesota beat Denver, Anthony Edwards was like, well, I'm going to have Kyrie next series. Let's go. And it's like, all right, that didn't work because no one could guard Luka, right? So what's going to happen? Are we going to see Drew Holiday take his shot at Luka Doncic? Is he big enough and strong enough? I don't know. Like, all those things are definitely going to come into play, and that is going to be
I
the
can't believe
Missoula
Bill's
question.
asking to see more O'Shea Brissett. I mean,
Cody, am I wrong? Was he not asking for it?
I can't believe that you can't believe that Bill Simmons of all people, because Bill comes out of nowhere with some of these things. You're like, like you're right to have that reaction, but when you listen to Bill Simmons, you're like, yeah, no kidding. He asked for what's his name, O'Shea
Brissett.
Who cares?
You know, I think we
is that Ice Cube's son?
I think we could probably see more Svi Mikhailyuk in the third quarter. I think give Boston a different look on the wing.
Oh God, I gotta say, and I love Bill, and I know you do too, Cody. Pat, clearly you're not as big of a fan of his as we are, because we listen to like every episode. Yeah, I don't think you listen to his pod all the time.
No,
though,
right? I listen to JJ's,
episode.
who Bill hired. Fantastic hire. But no, I don't.
Shout out. I made an appearance on New York actually recently. I popped into one of his what's it called? His Twitter Spaces and got on the show. That was fun. Yeah, it was fun times. But anyways, he was very much unhinged in this preview of this series, which I get. Like, he's a Celtics guy. He is one of the rare media folk who holds his fanhood like just as high as it was 30 years ago, which I love that. I don't think I have that in me outside of the Knicks. I think I have it with the Knicks, but not the other team. But whatever. I was listening to him being like, bro, this guy's on one right now. He is being a Boston boy, and like, I am enjoying this, but I'm also getting so frustrated with the things that are coming out of his mouth with previewing this series. Cause I don't know. I just couldn't. I believe everything that he's saying in the sense that like I expect it, but Cody, I couldn't believe how much of a Boston boy he was being. It was kind of bothering me. I'm glad that Cousin Sal was on the episode to give him shit.
Yeah, he's able to ring him back in. And I also love when it's him and Russillo. Like, I just think that those two break down
it's the best.
The league as well as anyone does. You know they're watching, so I always appreciate that, because like when they go into like Thunder stuff, I'm like, wow, you really do know like what the rotations look like and what minutes are allocated. And I'm like, how can you do that for 30 teams? So it's always impressive to me, and I think those two break it down as well as anyone.
Yeah, shout out them. All right, let's go with the preview.
So.
Yeah, they're shout out Bill. Thank you for listening. Let's do our preview. That's it. NBA Finals game 7. What the frick am I even saying? Let me try that again. NBA Finals, Boston Celtics, Dallas Mavericks. Let's make a prediction. Let's put it on wax. Pat, do you want to go first? Are you ready? Ready to rock?
Yeah, you just want who wins and how many games?
Yeah, sure. Give me whatever you want.
Man. No, I'm not ready right now. I want to hear what you guys have to say first. I know what I want to say. I just don't know if you guys go. I'm going to deflect. I'm going to right. The final 2 minutes. I'm going to pass.
Call a timeout like Joe Mazzulla would and regroup. All right. So I'm going to say this. A lot of times when I'm making predictions, I make it and I stick to it. Like when I said Knicks in 6 against Philly and they go up 2-0, I didn't waver. I said I still think it's Knicks in 6. Ended up being right. Pacers, I said Knicks in 6. Ended up being wrong. Stuck to it. I thought the Boston Celtics were going to win the championship before the NBA playoffs started. That was my pick. I have it on the podcast. It's what I said. It's on wax. I sit here today thinking I want to say the Dallas Mavericks are going to win this. And part of it is because Luka Doncic is the best player. And I want to boil it down to that being true. But I do believe that the Boston Celtics, even though they played to their competition a little bit too much in this playoffs, and it looked like they were too close to the Pacers, and they lost that game to the Heat, and if the Sixers or Knicks or whoever were healthy, maybe the Celtics wouldn't even be here. But at the end of the day, they've been the best. They are the deepest. They are the most talented 5 people on a court of any team in the NBA right now, or this entire season. And I think it's going to end up becoming true. I'm going to go Boston Celtics. I'm going to go in 6, because if the game goes to 7, home court doesn't matter to me. If it goes 7, Luka Doncic and the Mavericks are winning this thing. That's it. End of the day, chips on the table. I'm betting Luka every single time. But in the whole totality of the series, I think the Celtics outlast the Dallas Mavericks. Celtics in 6 is my final pick.
I'm getting a little sick, Pete, of like just doing the same thing over and over again.
Oh, God
Like,
damn
can we
it.
think a little differently? Like games
I know.
and team? But I'll at least give you my reasoning, and it's at least somewhat different. But I think Boston in 6, and the thing I'm most afraid of beyond obviously Luka, Kyrie, and on the court is the fact that I haven't really heard anyone predict that Dallas is going to win this series, and Dallas is way too good to me. Maybe I'm missing it. I'm hoping I am. Is that true? Am I missing it?
I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of people being like Dallas
Okay, great.
right now.
I feel like
that's all
that
just
anywhere. So that makes me feel a little better.
And now, granted, I get a lot of my information from high school kids nowadays. So, I'm walking around the school, who's winning the finals, and a lot of people are like, oh, Luka and the Dallas Mavericks are winning. Like, Mavericks. Celtics are too soft. Jayson Tatum not good enough. Like, that type of stuff. And I agree in my heart, but my head is telling me I have to pick the team that I think is better in Boston.
And I think at some point, to me, this really comes down to matchups. Like, I think Boston has the absolute best possibility, the best chance to match up with the Luka Kyrie combo. Because you've got at least 4 guys, Drew, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, and Jayson Tatum, that you're going to throw at them and be able to throw at them very comfortably. If it's size, you've got Tatum and Brown. And if you need a little bit more of a versatile or you just want to switch it up, like you're talking about elite all NBA level defenders that they have to throw in spades. And I just think the matchup is one that is going to be tough for Luka, tough for Dallas. I was kind of alluding to it earlier, how Boston has kind of slowly crept up and crept through. And there was a small part of me when it came to the Thunder that thought there's just no way that in 1 year this all comes together. And it does feel like Dallas is actually kind of taking those steps. But I think they have one more step. I think they're here. Maybe in a year or two, we're talking about them being an NBA champion. But I think right now it's Boston's time. I think, like everyone's saying, they are the better team. To me, there's no question. Luka's the best player on the floor. That's also no question. It wouldn't shock me. From a gambling perspective, I do want to take Dallas with that plus money, that plus 175. Like, there's no doubt I would love to. But my head tells me that Boston's better, that it's their turn, it's their time, that Tatum will elevate when it needs to, that the others will do more than enough, and that Boston does end up taking it in 6.
Pete, I'm glad I deflected. I'm glad I'm going last. And I'm also glad that you said if it goes to Game 7, you're putting your money on Luka and the Mavs. Give me the Dallas Mavericks on Boston's floor to win it in Game 7. Luka wins his first chip. Tatum shrinks in these finals again. Porzingis, the calf doesn't hold up. If they're fully healthy, Boston can probably win this series. Tough to predict injuries. Maybe that's more so me just, what's the lesser of 2 evils for me that I want to see? Do I want to see the Boston Celtics win a title, or do I want to see Kyrie Irving win a title? I don't know what the lesser of 2 evils are, but I can see an avenue where Porzingis can't stay healthy. I can see an avenue where Tatum shrinks and Boston just has no answer for Dallas. Boston has no answer for Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. And it's Luka. You get the memes of him, the assassin killer, whatever he said to Rudy Gobert. I'll keep it PG for the podcast, but there's plenty of more of that to come in the NBA Finals. Luka Doncic immortalizes himself in these NBA Finals, puts on one of the greatest 7-game performances against a team that is, on paper, that much better than them, and he single-handedly wills the Mavericks to an NBA title. Give me Dallas in 7.
I'm jealous. I want to say it. I do. I kind of already, I regret my pick, but my pick is my pick. And I picked it before the playoffs. I had no choice, really. Because, I don't know. That's just what, if I said the Chiefs were going to win the Super Bowl before the playoffs and then I thought they played like crap and got lucky to get to the Super Bowl, I was still going to pick them in the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? I said Celtics before the playoffs started. I feel like I have to stick with it, but boy, do I want to say Mavericks. And I'm going to be rooting for the Mavericks, frankly. Like, I'm going to be rooting against my own pick here. I'm going to be probably placing a wager with my heart on the Dallas Mavericks to win this series. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm jealous of your pick right now, Pat, because that's what I want to say. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, you made a good point too. When it came to the Chiefs, like I doubled down, I tripled down on the Chiefs on winning the Super Bowl. As bad as they were playing, I said, just wait, they'll get it going. And when I felt like everybody and their mother was picking the Ravens to beat them, finally knock them down, I said the Chiefs will win this game. And it feels like the Celtics have the pedigree of the Chiefs. They don't have the titles. They have the players. They have more experience overall than the guys on the Mavericks do, maybe with the exception of Kyrie. But I was wrong about Dallas. I've been wrong about them all year. I thought they would beat the Clippers in the first round just because I didn't believe that Kyrie or PG could stay healthy, and sure enough, Kawhi, couldn't. I thought OKC would beat them. I really did, Cody. I thought your Thunder, as young as they were, the lacking of postseason experience, I didn't think it mattered. And then even then, I thought Anthony Edwards was going to take over and be the best player in that series, and they proved me wrong again. I'm not betting, and I'm not hoping, and I'm not expecting to be wrong again when it comes to Dallas. I'm on the Mavericks side this time. I just, again, we can go through all the numbers. We can go through the talent level of each player's 1 through 5 in the starting lineup. This Mavericks team has the it factor. They do. We know Luka. We damn sure know Luka and Kyrie have the it factor this postseason. And who knows? I'm talking about Joe Mazzulla. What does he do? It feels like he's escaped. Maybe he does end up being the scapegoat. As well as Rick Carlisle coached in that series against the Knicks. I mean, he shit his pants in the Eastern Conference Finals in those couple of games, not using his timeouts, not advancing the ball, not being able to inbound the basketball. Maybe you get some blunders like that from Joe Mazzulla. It's going to take some stuff. It's going to take some mistakes from Boston. It's not going to be Dallas just single-handedly grabbing it from them. It's going to take some mistakes from the Celtics, but that's what it's going to take for the Mavericks to win this title. I'm hoping for it.
Man, I'm excited.
Can I just say, do not be surprised in our gambling group chat on DraftKings to see a Game 1 Dallas plus 6.5 and potentially even a sprinkle of the money line. Like, I do think this series is tight. I'm not taking Boston right now at minus 210. Like, you guys know how I bet. Probably the fans at this point know how I bet. Like, I'm not laying some type of juice to return half of my investment. So that's out of the question. But to see Dallas win Game 1, I wouldn't be shocked. And then maybe they're down 1-0, and then maybe's the time to strike while the iron's hot and take Boston then. So do not be surprised to see a plus 6.5 Dallas Game 1 bet coming from.
You're not going to bet the Celtics minus 210. Your name's not Mark Shenlogian?
Exactly. I'd have to parlay it with something because I bet like a fool, and I'm like, ooh, I need to see at least close to even odds. So minus 210 is just, it's not in
Same
my
game parlay for Game
playbook.
1 from Mark. Celtics plus 13.5. Tatum 20 points. Brown 20 points. Tatum 2 rebounds, and then when Tatum gets 1 rebound, are you kidding me? How did this bet not win?
I can see it happening. It's happening as we speak. He's currently cooking up the same game parlay as we speak. That's great. I mean, I think one other guy, the only guy that we didn't mention on Dallas's side who can be interesting here from a defensive perspective is Derek Jones. Derek Jones got that size to match the Tatum Brown effect, if you will. I don't know. He's had his moments too. I'm sure Cody, in that Thunder series, you're like, fucking Derek Jones? Seriously? And in the conference finals, he had even more moments. I think a guy we didn't mention enough on this pod, like he's a guy who's going to be playing a lot of minutes and is probably going to be asked to guard Tatum a good bit of time. And that's going to be interesting. So important role player, Derek Jones, to fight the other important role players on Boston and like Drew Holiday and Derek White and whatnot. So Al Horford, also Luka Doncic, possibly just fucking playing Al Horford right off the court. Who's to say? Guy's going to be in every action. I feel like we almost scratched the surface of anything we could talk about with this game, but we also went an hour and a half or hour 15 already. So that's all we have to do. And we're going to be able to talk about this series again and again because it starts Thursday. They don't play again until Sunday. and then don't play again until Wednesday. A lot of days off in between all these games. We'll be back to talk about it more. We were going to do quick hitters on baseball, and no, we're not. Guess what? We're not going to do it. Cody, give me 13 seconds on the Mets. How about that?
I can't believe in them until there is somebody who can be put on the mound at the end of the game that I trust can actually close it.
Fair. Pat, give me 13 seconds on the
Yankees
Mets or
are
Yankees.
unbelievable. They keep winning. They keep spanking the Twins. I keep taking them on the early win money line. They keep hitting it, and Garrett Cole hasn't even hasn't thrown a pitch this year, and that's going to change very soon. And the Yankees are on pace for 112 wins. Look out. Just look out. And also listen to the fan tomorrow night. I'll be on after the Yankees until 2 a.m. Thursday night and do early Friday morning. Catch you then.
Bang, bang. Love it. I agree. Mets are making the playoffs. That's
Yes.
June to the moon, Cody.
Let's go.
June to the moon. No, I do think the Mets are going to make a little run here in June, though. I really do. I think they're going to play. They're playing much better. I know you're shaking your head. I'm not actually talking about making the playoffs. I'm not. But they have the Phillies in London, and that's going to be tough. Phillies are freaking really, really good. However, there's some games moving forward after that, up until they play the Yankees at the end of June, where they can win some baseball games. That's all I'm saying. You can win some games. I like it. And I think we're going to be looking at a team that's teetering 500 in the relative future. Like within the next month, we're going to say, all right, listen, hey, the Mets, they're only 3 games under 500. What are we doing here? Let's talk about something. I think it's going to happen just so we can get our hearts ripped out in a more dramatic fashion. But they're going to play better baseball. They're already playing better as we speak. So that's all I got. All right. Subway Sports Talk. Pat Boyle, Cody O'Connor. NBA Finals preview in the books. What a time to be alive. The finals start Thursday night. I can't wait for that finals energy. You can't get that anywhere else in sports. You know, it's just beautiful, beautiful stuff. Cannot wait. So that's all we got. Thanks for listening. As always, for Pat, for Cody, I'm Pete Kennedy. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review on your podcast app, or hit us on socials at Subway Sports Talk. We'll talk to y'all soon. Cheers.